Um, Isaac Stewart Quilter Paulsen. I think my parents both wanted their names in my name, maybe. And then 11/27/1986. I think Top Gun came out in 1986. um, and then I was born here in Salt Lake and grew up originally down in Sandy. And then we moved to Holiday, I think when I was like 7 or something like that, just over on, well, there was a house we rented for a little bit, and then we moved to Viewmont Street, so not too far away from here. I've always been a very curious person in terms of like how things work and things like that. I remember when I was a kid spending lots of time playing Legos and like tinkering with things when I was younger, and my parents definitely nurtured that through, gifts and just letting me do my thing. And there's 6 of us in my family, so 6 siblings. I'm the second to youngest. And they're all amazing people. I love them all. And my dad did such a good job raising us. And I just think about, since my dad's funeral was a few weeks ago, my dad used to always take us up hiking on Lone Peak, and we'd go as a family. And that was kind of like the yearly outing that we did. And the way I approach and view the current, struggles that I'm going through with this brain tumor is, every day is super precious. We don't know exactly what's going to happen every day. Even on the trail, you don't know how tired you're going to get. If you might get fatigued, you need to rest. And I just view this whole experience, even life, as we're just hiking this mountain together. And all we have is each other to help support us. And, we just have to be flexible as people get discouraged or if people are going through something. So I think my dad instilled a lot of those qualities in us through experiences, and I think it's really evident in, my family's approach to life, my siblings, and my mom is just an amazing rock in our family. Yeah, in general, I think I just loved being a kid. My brother and I were talking. It's kind of interesting. You really do come into this world as a kid, and you leave this world as a kid in so many ways. It's like this paradigm. Sometimes that's faster or shorter for other people. And yeah, it's really interesting. Taking a step back, I think in general, I have a lot of belief and faith in, our Heavenly Father caring about us individually. People throughout this experience I've been on for basically the past month and a half, there's just been so much love, and I felt so much strength through people's prayers and people reaching out to us. It's quite remarkable in terms of being able to receive that much love. I don't feel like I'm adequate. My vessel isn't adequately prepared to receive that much love. But it definitely shows that people can be very kind, and that gives me a lot of hope and optimism. Throughout this whole experience, I've really just every day I've tried to find hope, and then peace, and then love. Those are the 3 things I try to focus on. Hope for my own condition, and hope for my family, and hope for others around me, and then peace. I think everyone tries to find a sense of peace in their life, even though we're always being strained. And then I just find myself saying I love you a lot more to people, which I think is just so important. And then I've been doing a little post on Instagram every day. I've really been trying to find someone that helps motivate me for that day. So every day I just try to find a person that I love and that can help motivate me and keep them in the back of my mind to help get through that day. And I make it sound like my days are so hard. I'm pretty functional. I can think, I can walk, I have some pressure in my head, but it's not like I'm unconscious half the time or anything like that. I ended up talking more about like what I'm going through, I guess, than my history. So I when I was a kid, in addition to like playing Legos and building things in my curiosity, I just loved spending time outside doing whatever. And I think makes me think for my kids, I want to make sure they spend more time outside just going around. I think there's a lot of things that they can get distracted with. And one of my friends growing up, I remember we would just make like grass channels in the backyard and like crawl around and, play with Nerf guns and stuff. It seems so like that play was so much fun. I think it's so good for the brain. And now I love my kids so much, but sometimes I think like, I was like, I didn't have an iPad or a phone. I didn't get that until like high school, and I feel like it turned out fine. I don't think that gave me a glioblastoma. So I think having kids, and especially my kids, I just want to make sure they just spend time outside and, just play. I think that's so important for their growth and development. And yeah, so I did a lot of that when I was younger. That was fun. We did a lot of silly, dumb things. I remember when my friend, he was in my neighborhood. His name was Jake Swanson. We had put together, I had a Jeep that I really liked to drive around. So we tied a ski rope to the top of it. And sometimes we'd longboard behind the Jeep, and sometimes... One of these times there was this canal down off of Cottonwood Lane on like a dirt road. It was probably someone's driveway. And we would like wakeboard in the canal being pulled by the Jeep. And it was totally probably a dumb thing to do. Like if we fell, we could have really gotten hurt. But we just found ways to do stuff like that just to like play. Some of them were more reckless than others. And I feel like that type of play is... I don't know, just not as prevalent. I mean, you see kids do dumb things, but I feel like we did some really dumb things. So I served in Houston, Texas. So my mission was actually kind of not interesting, but it's not like the normal story. So yeah, I got called to a mission, to Houston, Texas. And then, there was a lot going on I wanted to go on my mission before college, because I thought that would be like more productive rather than like waiting and doing a year of school, so I could like go right into school. And then, my brother had actually had some struggles on his mission and came home. And that was really hard for our family and really hard for my dad. And I remember in the MTC, I loved it. I loved learning how to love people and accepting them for who they are. To be totally candid, I took the mission probably more serious than most in terms of like really wanting to be productive, like, converting these people and helping them meet or see God or whatever it is and just come unto Christ. And I think I took it a little too seriously. So I was actually not even out there for that long before I had like a breakdown where I was like, I cannot stay out here. I am like way too focused. And it manifested itself in like me being physically like anxious and stuff like that. So I remember President Stewart, he felt really inspired. He was just like, I think you should probably go. And it was so hard for me to take that. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm going to go home. Especially after my dad having my brother not serve a whole mission. And it was just like, that was really hard. But, looking in hindsight though, I think it probably was the best thing for me. And I think these type of situations have changed. People are more accepting and understand this more. And then honestly, one of the sweetest experiences after I came home was working in the temple as a veil worker. I mean, I totally loved that. I could sit and meditate and read in between sessions. It was really beautiful, and I had a lot of beautiful experiences, I feel like, in terms of my own personal spiritual growth. So that was great. I think that was very complete for me. I started out doing, it was Xi, it was a fraternity at the U, so I met a lot of friends through there. And I joined it kind of after, when I came home from my mission, because a lot of my friends that were on their missions weren't here. I was here. So there's a few that were overlapped, but I didn't have as many of my social circles. And I have always really loved bringing together different people. I think a lot of people will say this about me. I have like random friends and stuff, but I think I just have this desire and yearning always to bring different groups of people together. It brings me like a lot of joy to see different people spend time together. And sometimes people are like, oh, I don't really know, like I don't really hang out with them, right? But I always thought it was fun to bring different people together. So during Xi, the fraternity I went to, we had all these weekly activities, and I actually had connected with Megan's cousin Mari, and we became friends. And then, so we were kind of hanging out, and there was maybe something there, nothing too intense. But eventually, through Mari, I was connected, and I spent a lot of time in the Institute. This is where all these activities were, at the LDS Institute at the U. And then eventually I, met Megan through Mari. And then, I think attraction is really important in a spouse, but I also think like, I always thought becoming someone's friend and like loving them as a friend was always more important to me. So, Meg and I just became like really good friends. We didn't even think like we were going to date or anything at first. And, that's just kind of how it evolved. We'd spend more time together at the Institute. We'd talk, we'd take some classes together there, and we'd become friends, and we hung out. And eventually we kind of just both realized that we liked each other. Actually, I'm pretty sure I said, I love you first. And then I think it took Megan like 6 months or something later to say it. But she eventually got there. I knew I liked her, and I knew I wanted to marry her. I just wasn't sure about like the time. I had never, people always say like, oh, you'll get married and it'll feel right. And it was just very, I didn't know what that formula looked like, or if there even was one. But yeah, so we eventually, I think we dated for like a little over a year, all 4 seasons. Always recommend. And then we got married. That was in September 2009, on the 26th. And I remember that day that we got married, it was super hot. We did a ring ceremony in my parents' backyard, and it was like, I don't know, it was like 90 plus degrees. It was so warm outside. So I remember the neighborhood all got these umbrellas and brought them over to help shade people during the ring ceremony from all the sun. And then we had a reception after. So we got married in the temple in the morning, and then we had the ring ceremony and the brunch, because we wanted to make sure everyone felt like included in the ceremonies and stuff like that. And then we had the reception that night, and then it got like very cold. It was like the weather. It was in September. It's always like a gamble. And then that was sweet. I remember Mike and Denise, my father-in-law and mother-in-law, had spent a lot of time like getting the yard ready for the reception. It was gorgeous. There was lots of dancing, and it was fun. I think I was very tired by the end of that day. That was a long day. But yeah, and then We went up to Stein Eriksen. It was a great place. The aspens up there are beautiful. I love that part of Park City. But yeah, so that's how Meg and I got met and how we married. Sorry, I'm gonna keep crying. In general, like, fatherhood and kids are the most amazing thing that I could ever ask for. It's really like, people are like, oh, you remember before, or you remember after your kids, but you don't remember before. In a lot of ways, that's true. I'm like, my kids are my life. I love them so much, and sometimes I probably don't show it as much as I should, because it can be. Oh, the other thing is so interesting. Or maybe it's not. Maybe it's just interesting to me. I really do feel that everything does turn out how it should be. I was just thinking with this brain tumor, this cancer diagnosis. They say all these things like, oh, you shouldn't have kids when you're on chemo or whatever and do all this. I'm like, if I would have gotten this just like, any other time, and Meg and I didn't decide to have 4 kids, pretty much as soon as we could, we have 4 kids under 7. It's a lot. And some people would be like, whoa, why would you do that much? But it just felt right to us. We just kind of we call it the 2-year plan. We just loved kids, and we wanted to have these beautiful angels, and everyone was just as good as the last. And, I was like, in retrospect, if we wouldn't have done that, we might not have had Iris, like I could have had this, and then right now we'd be talking about having kids, and then who in their right mind would have another kid with these type of uncertainties coming up? They probably wouldn't. And then I'm like, well, then Iris wouldn't be here, So I think everything does kind of work out. It doesn't work out maybe the way you expect it to, but I think of this analogy as a tree, and sometimes in literal family tree and figurative, but all these branches are growing up towards the sun, and some get blocked by others, and some die and prune off, but everything kind of organically grows to the light how it should. And it's beautiful when you look at the tree. And sometimes I think it's harder for us to, realize and see our own position and take a step back. Everyone wants to be like this super strong branch somewhere on the tree that makes it all the way to the sun. But the reality is that doesn't happen to everyone. And it's okay to be, I think, content with the blessings and everything that you do get. And I think I'm trying to take that analogy to heart. Like, I don't know exactly, where my branch is growing or how it's going to end up. I'm going to do everything I can to keep it strong and to continue to have it grow. But, some stuff is just, sometimes it's not meant to be. Sometimes it's better that something dies or something happens to someone that, because it's either going to make me stronger or it's going to, not. And that's okay. It's okay to have that happen. Does that make sense? So I have always loved just like a good analogy, a good parable. I think they can layer on a lot of lessons. You can remember them easier. You can, tell them to someone. My kids are very curious. It's so much fun. Daphne is just immensely curious. It's so much fun to listen to her. She has so many questions. I think a lot of people say I was like that when I was younger. And then Raleigh is just so much love and kindness. He gives the best hugs. I never want him to grow out of that, because I think people just need to be more like that. They get more calloused, I feel like, as they get older. So if he just keeps that, I think that's really beautiful. Ruthie is a little, as far as I can tell, she is 3 though, but she is this little boss. She loves to direct. But she also is just so adorable. This is part of the reason why it's so hard to stop having kids. When they all are just so cute, and I'm like, great. Iris is still, she's only 1, but she can really walk. So we're still trying to figure out exactly what's her mode. But I'm sure it will reveal itself. It's very overwhelming sometimes. Megan, to be totally candid, really is the glue of our family. And we couldn't do anything without her. She loves her kids so much. I think it's important to find really good examples in your life that you can draw on for strength. I think Megan is a really good example of that. Her mom, Denise, is an amazing example of that. And everyone's good in different ways. You know, you have to find... People are not all equal. That's why it's fun to draw on strength for different reasons from people. Because everyone has different talents. Like, I think my dad instilled a lot of just hard work in his kids. And my mom, I actually always viewed her as she's just a little bit more lighthearted and fun. She's just always so easy to talk to, so natural to talk to. So I think it's, helpful to look at, like, what are all these qualities of these people around me, and who do I want to become, and how do I incorporate them into my life? I think your parents are a great place to start. And then there's lots of other circles that you can reach out to, It doesn't have to just be your parents, because sometimes people don't have perfect parents. Sometimes they're not the best parents. That's where you probably want to find like a different example. Everyone wants work-life balance. I don't think anyone actually knows what it means. I mean, some of the stuff is just physics. You need to sleep, and some people need to sleep like so long. And then you're left with, what are the remaining hours of the day that I have? And then you have all these external pressures around, like, you want to be a good father, and you want to be a good husband, and you want to be a good provider, and you want to be... And then I think, I don't even know if I do this very well, but generally I just try to think like, if I'm balancing these things, how do I try to optimize for like best outcomes? Whether it be in like my family or work, or you still have to make money, or but I do think sometimes people overthink it. Like, sometimes it is easier just to take everything day by day and look at what has to be done and kind of do that, and the rest will work itself out. Not to say that you don't want to build like a plan, but if you create like a scaffolding of what you want to get done in general, to be totally honest, I am not like a specific checklist person. Like, I don't make like a detailed checklist and have to do everything in one given day. I probably should do better at that, but I don't. I really do feel that when I wake up, some of the day's gonna be hard and some of it will be easier. But just like that tree growing, I feel like if your intentions are really good and you're trying, things seem to usually work out. That doesn't mean you don't dismiss signals of like, hey, I don't know, your mortgage is due or something like that. There's some clear delineations where you have to like meet some certain milestones, and when it comes to that, you just gotta just buckle down and get it done. But I guess in general, I don't think it's not as important to stress about it too much. Going back to, I think the most important thing is to give some kid some Legos and some free time and let him create and play. And And then that could be a point where you realize like, oh, he or she is more like engineering minded or not. And you can kind of nurture it in whatever way you can. So for a while in college, I really wanted to go to, I wanted to go to med school. Like I thought like, oh yeah, med school's like where it's at. They make pretty good money, and it seems like there's a lot of doctors. And so I kind of did my college curriculum to move towards that direction. And I got really into trying to make sure my application would be so well-rounded. So I became a CNA and did like clinical rotations in college and or not in college, in high school. And then in college, I was working at primaries. And I remember I worked there for pretty much 7 years all through school. And I remember I would be so tired after a night shift, and I wanted to try to like optimize my schoolwork and like my sleep. So I had this Subaru wagon that like I would sleep in the back of after night shifts, and then I'd get up and go to like 7:30 organic chemistry or whatever it was. And that was very hard. I was like, this is like pretty brutal, working like 3 night shifts and then going and doing like classes. And they were always really interesting to me, especially like all this, like I loved chemistry, organic chemistry. I thought cell biology was really cool. But I think looking back, the thing I really liked about them is understanding the world around us and how things worked. And being able to predict that. It's like a system, physics and calculus. And so I took all these classes, and then, I got to the point where I actually even I took the MCAT. I did decent. I didn't do amazing. But to be honest, like it just did not feel like right for me. I was like, there's going to be so much school. I was interested in so many different things. I was like, I don't want to like just do this. So then I started doing some research at the University Hospital. And it was called the Karma Lab, and it was with this electrophysiologist called Dr. Marouche. And he was just such a big personality. And it was really fun to work with, software and clinicians. And, I came to this realization that like, software in general and things like this are much more portable in terms of your interests. In fact, because I think that's when this was kind of like a career inflection point for me, and Meg and I were married at that point. And my father-in-law had done software development before Mike. And, I was really happy that having those conversations with him, because he was like, this might be something you like. It could be interesting. So I started to lean towards that more. And then at that point, I bounced around between a couple different jobs, and I finally got a job at Instructure, which was a bigger company doing web development for them. And then, from there on, like that's what I like to do. I like to, not just the programming, but like the architecture of the systems and how they come together. Again, I go back to like, I really loved building with like Legos and like base components. And I feel like that's always where my head was at. I just wasn't honest enough with myself to realize that's what I should do. But when I started doing that, it was way easier. And, some people say like, oh, find what you love and you don't work another day in your life. And I definitely feel work, but I definitely enjoy what I do, which makes every day a lot easier than probably being a physician. So at Roan, so I manage all the data and technology. So basically I have a team of developers and engineers, and we have a lot of things that we focus on. We have like the data warehouse and the intelligence and analytics that come from that surface business decisions. And then we have this arm that's actually developing like the shopping experience on their website and how all that information integrates with our ERP and, our operations arm. There's a lot at play. But But yeah, I really like taking a step back and looking at, like, we call it like the tech stack. And then we see, hey, how does this all work together? What's the most efficient way to do this? And what are the people and things we need in place to be able to accomplish like what we want to set out to do? So right now I help orchestrate all of that. And it's really interesting. Like it's a lot of fun. And that's the interesting thing. You can work in any field. It could be like apparel, or it could be, I could go back to medicine and like work on something terrible that a patient's having problems with. Like there's so much flexibility, I think, to that mindset. I call it like the integrator. Some people can take all these disparate ideas and then try to integrate them together. And sometimes doing that is harder than just taking like a path, if that makes sense. My kids, obviously. I mean, they're everything. And then obviously Megan's like at the top, but we share that joy together. And that's what tries to keep me going at the end of the day. Like, because I want to be able to, I've had so many sweet experiences with life after death and other people on the other side. I don't fear death at all. I really don't. But I think there is something really beautiful about being able to experience life in this body. So I'm just trying to stay around as long as I can. So I was having like some fatigue, and I had these couple bouts of being like dizzy, like when I'm walking, like this serpentine movement. I was like, that's totally weird. And then I had this feeling that I started seeing my primary care physician, and I was having like, I was kind of saying like, oh, my ear's kind of being weird or whatever. And I even said like, I feel like I was like structure determines function. I was like, what are the chances I just go get a CT or an MRI scan? And he was like, usually if you do that, then you might find, they're expensive, and you might find something that like is nothing. And like, I was like, in hindsight, I was like, this is kind of silly. And then that was in early May. And then probably like a week later, I was super tired. I think it was really hard because we had a few kids at home, and I was like, Meg, I'm sorry. I was like, can we just go to the ER? I feel like I need to get a CT or an MRI scan. I know that might sound weird. And so we went to the ER, and then I think we found someone to watch the kids real quick so we could go there. This is the other logistical thing, like with this whole situation. It's really hard to do anything with our 4 kids. We're trying to juggle as best we can. So then they took me into a CT scan, got that, and then they want to do an MRI. I said, did you see anything? They said, they didn't really tell me, and I was like, you're not doing an MRI if you didn't find it, if the CT scan was nothing. So they found this mass in my front right lobe, and then they scheduled me with to get a biopsy at St. Mark's, or an evaluation the next week. And this ER visit was on 5/11, which was on a Wednesday, I think. But then, so Mike, since he died from a glioblastoma, his neuro-oncologist was Howard, and they work at Huntsman Cancer Institute. And I was just like, man, I just want to get in to see someone as soon as I can. I don't know if I can wait for, all the way till Monday. The ironic thing is, I think if I would have stayed overnight in the ER, I guess I could have seen a neurologist doing rounds. But I just didn't want to sleep in the hospital. Part of the story will make more sense later, how bad I don't want to sleep in a hospital. And then, so we were able to connect with Howard, which was Mike's neuro-oncologist, and he said Dr. Jensen was one of the best neurosurgeons. And then, so I got an appointment with him on that Friday with a consultation the week of the 11th, and then met with him, and the scan showed that it was in my front right lobe. And then, Dr. Jensen was this is in a great position for operation. Like, if you're going to have a tumor, this is where you want it. And I was like, well, I guess that's good news. And then I was like, how many of these have you removed from this location without side effects? Because I kept saying like how I wanted my brain to be the same and stuff like that. Who wouldn't want to? And then he was like, I've removed like 1,500 of them from this location. I was like, oh my gosh. And then he was like 1,500 without any serious complications or side effects. I'm like, then I said, can we do it today? And then he was like, well, unfortunately it takes a little bit more time and planning to like get the surgery rolling. But he's like, we can do it next Friday. And I was like, oh man, wait another week. I was like, I guess we can do that. So yeah, that's what we did. And then we waited till that next Friday. I think that was 5/20 was the surgery date. And then went in for surgery. I was feeling super calm. I was just trying to just stay just fine. Like, everything's going to be fine. Because I was like, what's the point of worrying? I'm going to go to sleep, and if it's not fine, I'll wake up somewhere else. But yeah, so the surgery seemed to go well. They did a intraoperative MRI where they do a resection, they do a craniotomy, they do an incision, they cut open. They call it a bone flap, but it really is your skull. So they take that off, and then they go in and they resect the tumor, and then they put you into the MRI scanner, and they do another MRI to see if they can see any tumor that's enhanced on the scan. They'll bring you back out, and they'll do additional resection if they see anything. I know the whole thing's kind of like, and it's like 7 hours long or whatever. So they did that. I think Megan created this little Instagram account where she like was blogging about her experiences, which I think it's kind of good to read. And then, yeah, I guess I wasn't waking up from anesthesia for about 2 hours. I guess they've been trying to wake me up in the ICU. And then I finally came to after Danny, one of the nurses, started like really cranking with a lot of pain on some of my brachial plexus to try to get me to wake up. And then eventually I woke up. Fun little side thing is I not always, but I like to plan for things. So Meg and I have this little code where, it actually means like I love you. It's just like 3 squeezes of like one person's hand to the other. And I was telling her, I was like, if I don't wake up or if I can't talk to you, like squeeze my hand 3 times. And if I get it, I'll squeeze your hand 3 times back. And I think when she came in there for those 2 hours that I wasn't conscious, she had come and sat by me and done that, and then I had done it back. So I thought I guess that worked. So maybe that gave her a little bit of peace, like that I wasn't totally brain dead. Because they thought I was brain dead, and they took me into a CT scanner, and then realized that I had blood flow, all the lights should be on, and then they continued to try to wake me up. And then when I woke up, I guess I kept saying Mike, Mike, Mike over again, which is Megan's dad. And I remember Denise telling me, if you see Mike, give him a big hug. And I can't help but think that I probably did, I don't remember specifically that. But I think I was, connected in some way, to my ancestors. I had a really sweet experience during the surgery. It's kind of intense, but I'll try to talk about it. When I woke up, it wasn't like a dream. It was like I had a bunch of memories that were in my mind after I woke up from the surgery, and they all had, they were memories in the sense that they had like chronology. Like I knew which one happened before the other. So that in that way, it felt like very different than a dream. And then they also had like space, meaning like a location tied to the memory. So from my eyes, when I woke up, I had this memory when I woke up in the ICU, and I took these papers. I started writing down all these notes because my mind was just flooded. I didn't want to forget anything, and I still feel like I've forgotten a little bit of it. But during the surgery, there was like a portal that opened up, like above me, like down by my feet, like looking away, and it was like a cutaway, like floating during the surgery, and I saw some people looking down through this window down at me, and I got this distinct impression that they were there for different reasons. So one of them, there was Mike that was there, and there was my grandpa Quilter, and both of them actually had brain tumors, and I thought that was kind of interesting. And I got this impression that they were there, because I was afflicted with this brain tumor. And they're not doctors or anything, but we joked Mike really would just be there to watch it because he would think it was cool. And my grandpa Quilter might have been there, to make sure they sewed my head up right and it still looked good or something. I don't know. But then further down, I saw Bestefar, which is my grandpa, my dad's dad. And then we call him Bestemor. It's Norwegian for grandma and grandpa. And then Bestemor was down by my left foot, like if you look down this portal opening up. And the general impression I got from them being there, Bestemor always had this like warm, comforting presence. And then I think Bestefar was there to help with like kind of the logistics of everything. I don't know exactly what. And then over on the left side, there was two more people. It was my Uncle Leif and then my Uncle Nels, who both died in their 30s. And I had thought about this before the surgery at some point. I don't remember exactly when. Must have been that week prior. I was thinking about, the idea of dying younger and like what that might be like. And, I don't know if it was an unconscious fear or like, but I did kind of feel like, like Leif and Nels died at 37 and 35. I'm like, it's right about like where I'm at. So I did get this impression though that they were there to let me know like it's gonna be okay. Like you're not gonna die right now. You're not gonna die tomorrow. No one told me I'm not gonna die like in 5 years, which I would have loved. But I got this impression that like it's gonna be okay. Like there's not immediate death in your future, which I think was really comforting. So this whole experience was very. This might sound crazy, but I felt so closely connected with the afterlife that I don't think I would trade what I'm going through now for that experience. Which when you say that out loud, it's like, are you serious? You have like 4 young kids and you have like, how could you say that? But I'm just trying to emphasize that it was so real and important, and I think it was given to me as this like gift. And regardless of how long I live in this life, I will take it and cherish it, and it's an inflection point of my life. Do you know what I mean? I treat every day differently. So some people call these like experiences like spiritual gifts and stuff like that, but I don't know, and that might be true, but I do feel like access to heaven and love that comes from angels is available to everyone. You might not see it or recognize it. You might see it or recognize it in hindsight, but it's happening like all the time. There are people out there pruning and looking at every one of those leaves on that tree that we don't see. Like, the core motivation really is love, and we're here to help each other physically and spiritually. I was just kind of blown away very very fact there was like 6 people there during the surgery, not alone like I was like, I don't know, like one person. Like, why are there so many? And I think it's like, I don't know, I feel this way with my family. I don't know how you feel about your family, but there are so many people that love us and care about us and are invested in our happiness and finding joy in this life and experiencing like, you know, hard things, wonderful things. Like it all helps us realize what's important. I've actually commissioned an artist to make something of this because I think it'll make it easier to explain to people. But it's like if I'm laying on the hospital bed and then I'm looking up probably about like 9 feet above me and then like down a little bit. That's where like the window was cut open. Okay. So there's the other surgeons and everyone like around me. The painting actually, I'm having it called the Ancestral Surgical Theater. Because it was almost like it was a window that was cut open in the operating room for like viewing. Gotcha. Kind of like that Seinfeld episode where he's eating like the junior mints or whatever in the, not exactly like that, but that idea. Okay. The way I view this experience is through like the memory of my mind's eye. Okay. So like when I woke up in the ICU, it was like I had memories that I didn't have before the surgery, and they all were like, it's like all the information is there at once. Like, wow. And it's all like relatively clear because I can account like specific details and people, and like, it's like all the thought was placed in my mind at once. Or maybe it happened like while I was there through my spiritual eyes. Sure. And then when I woke up, it was inside my brain, accessible. See, I try to think about like, I'm like, how is this actually happening? It was like a memory, like calling up like a really fun, vivid memory with one of your friends or something like that. Okay. And it had like I think the most important part to me is it had like a sense of time and a sense of space, like where it was in the physical world. Yeah. Just like any other normal memory you'd have.